a really silly book for us to read today. It always makes me laugh. It's called Carlos and the Squash Plant. And this book has both the English words, so here's the title in English, and here's the title again in Spanish. Carlos and the Squash Plant. Remember, the title of the story tells us the name of that story. Jane Stevens wrote the story. What do we call someone who writes the story? Yes, we call them the author. What do we call someone who makes the pictures? In this case, her name is Jean Arnold. So she made the pictures. We would call her the illustrator. All right, let's see what happens with Carlos and the squash plant. But first, I want you to look at the cover. Where does it look like he is? Outside, is he inside? Yeah, it looks like he's outside, maybe on a farm. He's got a basket of delicious looking vegetables there. Okay, let's read. Carlos lived in the fertile Espanola Valley, nestled in the mountains of northern New Mexico. His mother and father were farmers and tended a large garden plot next to their thick-walled adobe home. They grew large green watermelons, sweet corn, juicy red tomatoes, and small green chilies so hot they burned the roof of Carlos's mouth. But his favorite vegetable was squash, because his mother used it to make calabacitas, a spicy dish that combines the flavors of corn, squash, cheese, and green chilies. There's that same picture from the front cover. Carlos spent most of his days helping in the garden right alongside his brother and father. Together they planted seeds, weeded between the long even rows, and gathered the vegetables when they were ripe. Carlos worked so hard that the rich brown earth ended up everywhere, under his fingernails, between his toes, and inside his ears. But he hated taking baths, and he especially hated washing his ears. His mother would warn him, "If you don't wash your ears, a squash plant will grow in them." Do you think a plant could really grow inside of his ears? Oh no, let's see what happens. But of course, Carlos didn't believe her. One day he had been in the garden all day and was especially dirty. When he came in the house, his mother told him he needed to have a bath before dinner. "Oh, Mama, do I have to?" asked Carlos. But his mother just pointed toward the bathroom door. Carlos went into the bathroom and shut the door. But instead of taking a bath, he just wiped off his face with a washcloth. Then he put on his pajamas, went to the kitchen, and sat down at the dinner table with his brother, mother, and father. "Did you take your bath?" his mother asked, looking at Carlos with a raised eyebrow. "Sí, Mama, I did," he said. Sí is Spanish for yes. Papa only shook his head. After dinner, Carlos went to bed early. Didn't really take a bath. Wonder what's going to happen next. Look at that picture. Oh my goodness. When the bright summer sun shone in his bedroom window in the morning, he woke up quickly. He had an itchy sort of feeling in his ear. And when he started to scratch it, he felt something strange. Carlos ran to the mirror. A tiny light green stem with two pear-shaped leaves was growing in his right ear. Just as he was wondering what to do, his mother called him for breakfast. He could smell the aroma of spicy hot sausage and eggs frying. Something is growing in his ear. "Just a minute, Mama," said Carlos as he ran to his closet where he found a wide-brimmed hat. There he is in the tree in his hat. "Good morning, son," said his mother. "Sit down and have your breakfast." "But why are you wearing that hat?" "It's such a sunny day today, and I don't want the sun to get in my eyes," answered Carlos. And he ate his breakfast so fast he was outside before his mother could get a second look. Why was he really wearing a hat? Yeah, he was trying to cover up that green thing in his ear, wasn't he? Carlos worked outside all morning and ate his lunch sitting on a branch of a huge cottonwood tree while a thin stream of water ran beneath them. At nightfall, he came inside, and when his mother saw him, she told him to take a bath before dinner. "Oh, Mama, do I have to?" he asked. But Mama just pointed toward the bathroom door. Carlos went into the bathroom, but again, instead of taking a bath, he only wiped his face off with a wet washcloth. Then he sat down at the table. "Carlos, did you take your bath?" asked his mother as she served dinner. "Sí, Mama, I did," said Carlos. And he quickly ate his dinner and then went upstairs to bed. He was so tired that he fell asleep immediately. Oh. The next morning, when the sun felt warm on his face, his right ear was itching more than ever. He jumped out of bed and looked in the mirror. The green plant that had been merely a tiny shoot the day before had grown to about 4 inches. 3 more leaves had joined the first 2. Wow, it's getting big. Caramba, thought Carlos. But just then he heard his mother calling him, and he smelled the aroma of fresh, warm cornmeal cakes cooking on the stove. Carlos ran across the hall to his brother's room and found a big hat on the highest closet shelf. He pulled it down over both ears and walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, son. Sit down for breakfast," his mother said. "But why are you wearing that big hat?" "Oh, the sun is so hot, I don't want it to get in my eyes," Carlos said. But he ate only a few bites of his breakfast and hurried outside. He looks pretty silly in that hat. That evening, Carlos came in from the garden dirtier than ever, and once again his mother told him to take a bath before dinner. But Carlos only wiped off his face and returned to the kitchen, the big hat still on his head. "Carlos, did you take your bath?" asked his mother. "Sí, Mama," answered Carlos, pulling the large hat farther down over his ears. After dinner, he went straight to bed. Carlos woke up late the next morning, and his head felt heavy on one side. He didn't need to look in the mirror to know what had happened. A long green vine with yellow blossoms hung down the side of his pillow and trailed onto the floor. Carlos tried pulling it out. He tried breaking it off. He tried stomping on it with his foot. But nothing would rid him of the squash plant, which was now several feet long. "Ay, caramba," he thought to himself. And just then he heard his mother calling him for breakfast. He ran into his parents' bedroom where he found an even larger hat in his father's closet. It looks like his mom was right. He didn't want to take his baths, and now he's growing a big plant in his ear. A big old squash plant. I don't know if you've ever eaten squash before. It's pretty yummy. Coiling the squash vine on top of his head, he pulled the hat down over both ears, then walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, son. Have some warm tortillas and honey," said his mother. "But why are you wearing Papa's hat?" "It's very sunny and bright outside. I want to keep the sun out of my eyes," Carlos said. "But the sun isn't shining today. It is windy and cloudy," said his mother. Carlos didn't answer, but rolled up a tortilla and took it outside to eat with him. Look at him with his hat, trying to cover up the plant, piling it all on top of his head, and then he put the hat on top of it. Sure enough, the weather was breezy and cool. Tumbleweeds blew down the road, and Carlos had to hold onto his hat with one hand while he weeded the garden with the other. Just as it was getting dark, Carlos let go of the hat for just a moment, and a gust of wind carried it down the road. At the same time, Carlos heard his mother calling him inside. Carlos covered his head with his arms, and before Mama could even ask him to take a bath, he had filled up the tub with water. Desperately, he began scrubbing his left ear. At the same time, he felt a tingly, itchy sensation in the other ear, and amazingly, the squash plant began to shrink. The more he scrubbed, the smaller it became, until finally the vine had completely disappeared. Carlos dried himself off, put on his pajamas, and walked out to the kitchen where he sat down for dinner. Oh, he finally took a bath. Looks like that got rid of that plant. Well, look at his face. How do you think he feels now? Yeah, I think he looks pretty happy. Mama, I finished my bath, and I even remembered to wash my ears, said Carlos. You are a good boy, and for you I have cooked your favorite dish, calabacitas, his mother said, and as she put the steaming plate down in front of him, she winked at Papa, who pretended not to notice. So I think his parents knew the whole time he wasn't taking baths, and they're very happy he finally decided to be responsible and take a bath. That's the end. There's some delicious crops that they grew on their farm. You know, I heard that they used the word fertile when they were talking about their soil earlier. And we heard that word in our other book about working on a farm. Remember, fertile just means it's really good for growing crops. All right, let's think about our story. So at the beginning, did Carlos like taking baths very much? He did not like to take baths. But what happened when he didn't take a bath? He grew a plant in his ear. Now, can you really grow a plant in your ear? No, that's just for pretend, of course. But you can get really dirty and icky, so it is important to take a bath. How did Carlos feel at the end of the story about taking a bath? Yeah, I think he was pretty happy. He started to like baths by the end. If it would keep a squash plant from growing in his ear, he liked it, didn't he? All right, thanks for enjoying that silly story with me. Bye, friends.